Welcome to the Cincy Postcast. I'm your host, Kevin Wallace, and we have a heck of an episode for you today. A three-parter, a proper three-parter. In part one, it is FC Cincinnati news, which, believe it or not, there was one player in particular not very good at showing up on time. In part two, it is an MLS roundup of news, more of a chef's tasting menu of MLS news. And in part three, we go deep on a mystery topic that Grayson had for us, and I think you're going to enjoy it. You put all that together, and that's going to be your postcast. Joining me to talk about all of that and more, I am joined by the usual crew. It feels like it's been a while. Joined by Grayson, joined by Chief. Chief, how was the time away from the pod? Was it well enjoyed?
It was well enjoyed up until Sunday night when I wasn't in the Eastern time zone, but at round about 7:30, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard, started to get a little twitch, like it's podcasting time. And there was no microphone around, and there was no one to hear my spicy, incredible, provocative takes. And that kind of bummed me out in the moment, because all the people I was traveling with were like, will you please, for the love of God, just shut up? We've been hearing you for 3 straight days. We don't need to hear any more of this nonsense. So I missed you guys. I missed you.
My wife, so when we're like in groups of friends, like, I don't know, like sometimes we'll be in conversation with groups of friends, and I'll like, I'll observe a lull in conversation, and I'll throw like another topic or something out there, because I feel responsible for, like, keeping things moving, keeping everybody
the Toastmaster
entertained.
right here.
And my wife will then immediately call it out. And she'll be like, oh, here he is. Here's the next topic he wants to talk about.
Oh, man. That is so true, though. Like, in doing this now, God, well, we've been doing this for like 2 years now. I've definitely been in like awkward conversations, especially, I've got young kids, they're in school, end up in plenty of super awkward social situations with adults I don't know, at like a birthday party or a school function. I just I gotta find something to talk to these people about. And I tell you, it is like podcast host mode comes on, and you're just like, so how was everybody's weekends? What'd you get into there, Greg? Like, what are you doing, man? Like, I have no idea who these people are, but I just like refuse to let the dead air hang.
No, I have this mental image of Kevin waiting to pick his kids up from school, and like the line of cars standing right there. And all of a sudden, just to break the tension, he pulls out the book of questions, and he's like, so would you rather be stabbed to death by a toothpick through the eye or a spork through the anus?
And I've got to keep this more handy. That is a great call. There's a daddy-daughter dance on Saturday. I'm going to need this.
The sad part is I have always been this way. Even when I didn't have a podcast, I was still a pompous and opinionated asshole. So,
oh, man.
What you see is what you get, unfortunately.
I like to, yeah.
I find with like small talk with like people you don't know well. So sometimes, like on Twitter, I'll be like, I'm going to write the dumbest thing or make the dumbest meme I can think of, and it'll get like 500 likes. And like, I'm not in Zach Blanford territory, no, right? I mean, surely not. But like for me, because like my whole thing is like I try to be like as repellent as possible on Twitter. And so sometimes I'll be like, I'm going to do the dumbest thing I can think of, and it'll like be wildly popular. And I also do that like in conversation. Like I used to be like really bad at like small talk. And then what I realized is like, no, like I'm just going to pretend I have nothing interesting to say.
Yes.
And then I became like pretty good at small talk.
It's like, how do you get good at small talk? You dumb yourself down to like the level of morning show host on a top 40 radio station. It's like, so how about those clowns in Washington, huh? Crazy weather we've been having lately. Hot enough for you? When are they ever going to get around to replace
wives, man?
When are they ever going to get around to replacing that Kroger in the neighborhood? Boy, it would be nice if we got one of those super Kroger like they have over in insert fancy neighborhood here.
Right. You need a good complaint about a mother-in-law if that's applicable to your life situation. That's always good.
Do you think Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift really are dating? I think it's all a setup. just banal, stupid conversation, and you can keep that going for hours. But eventually it sort of devolves into self-parody, and like I become very aware that I'm talking about absolutely nothing, and then my brain kicks in and I'm like, they know I'm just on autopilot in this conversation. And I never reached that point where I'm like, no, this is just how we all do things. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, God, they know I'm a bore.
I'm playing a role. Yeah.
So I had a job in government for a little bit.
Congratulations.
And one of my tasks was writing kind of, I'll say, public-facing documents. And the person I worked for at the time, like my immediate superior, I thought was, well, we had different sensibilities, let's say. And so I wrote a thing, and I was like, and I wrote this line that I was like, this is the dumbest bullshit I could think of, but he's gonna love it. And not only did he love it, but when the document went public, a very prominent political commentator tweeted that line in quotes with like 4 fire emojis after it. It's like, oh man. Like I must have terrible instincts. I just maybe I'm George Costanza, where like if I just need to go against every instinct I have, and that's the path to success.
Like on one hand, it's like that. This is incredible. I did exactly what I was supposed to do, and I dropped this line, and it worked perfectly. On the other hand, I disagree vehemently with the thought process that reached me here, and I am now beginning to question everything about reality and sanity. That this is the thing that worked best in this situation.
Oh God, I have a very similar situation at work that is very Costanza-esque. And I have to be very careful here because things could be revealed by mistake here. But essentially, a special project was dropped on my desk maybe 2 years ago, and it is still ongoing. And everybody working on this project knows it's a disaster. Everybody knows it's bad. It's terrible. It doesn't work. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. But at every single turn, we have to pretend it's doing great. And so now I'm in meetings where we're going to take this project to other sites, other countries. We're going to expand it out. And the whole time, yeah, it's great. It saved us so much money. This is lovely. And every single person who was touched said, this is a disaster. This did not work at all how we thought. And it's just this giant snowball that just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't know how it's ever going to end.
So like this is one of those rare moments where I feel like us as a podcast, as the only soccer podcast that, routinely doesn't talk about soccer, I do feel like there could possibly be some life advice for listeners here. And if I do have one piece of advice that I have gleaned over my time working as a professional, and it sounds like you're experiencing much the same thing there, Kevin, and that's that the biggest mistake you can make working somewhere is presuming competence in the people around you.
Yes.
Like 90 to 95% of the people that you are working with at any given time have absolutely no idea what they're talking about, and they are just faking their way through it. And any kind of confidence you see is just people who don't know what they're doing projecting confidence and adding an air of authority and gravitas to what otherwise amounts to bullshit. Like the person in the meeting that speaks up and is talking in glowing terms about something they're working on, it's a blank Word document on their desk. They haven't started it yet, but they'll manage to stand up and make themselves sound really, really confident for 5 minutes, get the little applause from the table, and then they head back to their cubicle or their office or wherever they're working from remotely, and they have a deep sigh and they're like, fuck, I got to figure something out about this.
Yeah. So when I first started working at, my, let's say like the job that turned into, I guess, my career.
I like how we're still pretending like the listeners don't know what Grayson and I do for a living.
It's good.
It's cute. It's cute. We should keep this up longer.
I had a coworker who was like a very different from me in many ways, but we had like just we had very similar sensibilities regarding like our work, and like a very similar experience at work, and like bonded kind of in the trenches, and ended up being, one of my groomsmen at my wedding. But we just started having a saying where like we would put something together and get like feedback and like go to the other's office and be like, like this is wrong. what they want to do is like bad and stupid. And we would just be like, and it would just, the other person would have to talk them down, and we would just say, give the people what they want.
Yep.
And that just became our little phrase around the office between the two of us. Give the people what they want. And I think that's it is an important lesson, because I also think like, like you may come to an idea that the way you're doing something is the best way to do something. And you may have good reasons for that. You may come to that idea honestly, but like, there's lots of people out there, and they all came to how they see things. Give them the grace to think that they came to how they see things honestly. And, we work in a society.
We do.
And it's not the end of the world if stuff doesn't go through exactly how you envision it. At the end of the day, part of going along is getting along.
And also never ever underestimate the how far in life you can get ahead by making the idiot who assigned you something to do feel like the smartest person in the room by telling them how incredible their instruction was, even as you went 3 different ways to do it, because what they were telling you to do was nonsense.
Now, on the other hand, if you do things exactly how you want to do them and take no feedback and don't, try to tailor it to anybody's wants or desires, you too can have a podcast with 12 listeners, and 1, then 2, then 1 sponsors.
And isn't that the dream?
So, just choose your path.
Look, when we had
Western man.
when we had 2 sponsors, doubling our sponsorship would require us to get 4. Now that we're back to 1, doubling our sponsorship only requires us to get 1 sponsorship.
Yep. We are well positioned to twice in 1 year double the number of sponsors we've had.
That's right.
We can increase our sponsorship exponentially.
It's like in with startups and startup culture. It's like you always have to be posting growth, and it doesn't matter how much it costs to acquire growth. It's like Netflix can burn through $10 billion in venture capital as long as they acquire 5 million new members. If they're profitable, but their membership members are shrinking, that's a disaster. People would rather see them burning money to grow than making money while shrinking.
I do love the streaming platforms in particular, like incessant need for more subscribers. Like, at what point are just all of the people that are going to subscribe to shit already subscribed. Like, it feels like a market that taps out pretty quickly. Like,
no, you're not thinking fourth dimensionally. Here's the way it works. Here's my $1 billion idea for Netflix. Are you ready for this? Because I just learned today that Netflix actually has a gaming service that apparently nobody knows about. And you can download games onto your iPhone. I think Hades is coming out, which is a phenomenal game. If you haven't played Hades, Run, Don't Walk, play that one at some point in the near future. But here's what Netflix needs to do in order to keep its pro-growth mentality. They need to buy Pornhub. And they need to include hardcore pornography on Netflix to get people in the mood. And then maybe some of those people, Netflix and chill, already a meme, but now we're really Netflix and really chilling, so that you can make more subscribers to Netflix. The only growth platform for Netflix is encouraging a higher birth rate so that they can have more subscribers potentially in the future. So anything they can do to encourage more people to get out there and get their swerve on, that's the only way they can truly grow.
Does porn encourage a higher birth rate? Or I feel like porn probably has a negative effect on birth rates, but I don't want to go down that tangent because I had another thought while you were talking about that. Because I'm thinking maybe that was their plan when before the actor strike, they were insisting that they get like the right to like map actors' faces and use their AI likeness, in any way
Celebrity
they want.
Porn with Netflix.
Right? It's like yeah,
or just like, I mean, obviously that use case, but then just like recast movies. It's The Godfather, but it's, an entirely new cast. So it's shot by shot the same thing.
Or hell,
now
no, you get it good enough and you can pick the actors you want playing everybody. If you want Don Corleone to be played by Richard Nixon, you just hit the button and all of a sudden it's Richard Nixon. That's the crime boss of the film.
I love that. Like a choose your own cast.
I feel like this should have happened on the holodeck more in Star Trek. That we're remaking great movies with absurd people as the leads,
or not even.
We should do Last Action Hero.
I love that movie. Off-season. That was on at that movie was on at the bar when we talked about this in the part that got cut from the Away Days video. That movie was on at the bar when Kevin and I were up in Columbus before you got up there.
It was great.
We should do Last Action Hero this offseason. Because that is an underappreciated movie. I would
go so far as to say it's Stallone. It's Schwarzenegger's best. Sorry, there's a Stallone joke in the movie that's phenomenal too.
Yeah, it's not Schwarzenegger's best, but it's a great movie.
We should do that. What we should do is we should announce the movie we're doing and then do it ahead of time so that people can have an opportunity to watch and then join in the discussion on the Discord.
That would require us to have like
foresight,
a day advanced planning and like object permanence.
I feel like we gave people a lot of lead time on the Mario Brothers movie. It just wasn't available on any platforms. We had to bootleg it from Mame.
Pick the one obscure one, right?
I mean, if we really got around to it, we could like make a list of movies and just say like we're going to be doing these movies through the off season.
It's like an anti-intellectual book club. It's like.
Yeah, which I'm still open to doing a
book club,
a Discord book club, like a post Discord book club.
We should do that.
Add it to our list of things.
We should do that and more video content.
Yeah. So we're gonna have a whole list of things to do, like another installment on the Ref CBA. Anything more about Dr. Kopp?
Oh my God, yes.
Dr. Kopp, attorney at law. I have like a notebook where I've got like the pilot episode kind of outlined.
Oh my God. With AI voices, we could do a table read with FCC players.
I did that in my Mandalorian episode.
A Dr. Kopp table read where all of the actors are FCC players would be so good.
I guess we have to use like Stack
exactly
as Dr.
who I was
Kopp.
thinking of would be Dr. Kopp. I don't know who else it would be. Though Meg's got enough content out there where you can get her voice. I don't know if she's the right age
Meg could do something,
demographic
yeah.
you want for Dr. Cop.
Well, she's
Right.
not Dr. Cop.
But who is?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, Steck would be the perfect Dr. Cop. Percent chance Steck knows anything about Dr. Cop. -5%. This is good.
Oh, speaking of,
And people listening to this probably don't know what Dr. Cop is.
you had to have made it through one entire poor audio episode after the Columbus Crew beatdown, where, let me spoil this for you. We don't usually get all 12 of the listeners after a really bad loss. There's a lot of people that just don't want to think about FC Cincinnati after that happens. So
And that is very fair.
Not our most highly downloaded episode. We might have only reached 5 or 6 people on that one. On the plus side for film review.
So anyway, Dr. Cop.
Oh, go ahead.
Dr. Cop, attorney at law. Just people, because I've had people, because people have said, like, you know, people like, we don't, like, I haven't always listened, so I don't get the inside jokes. And I appreciate the grace to say that we tell jokes here. Because that implies that any moment of this is fun.
So
And
Dr.
you'd be sorely mistaken in that entire assessment.
Yeah. But Dr. Cop is a show that we got onto this because there was an Imagine Dragons cover band that played before Hell Is Real in Columbus, and we were trying to figure out what the purpose of that entire genre of music was, and then we settled it was like specifically 4 commercials for procedurals, and then we came up with a procedural that's Dr. Cop, attorney
All 3
at
of
law.
them, baby.
And she's a doctor who became a cop because her husband was killed. And then we found out that the DA was probably in on it. So while she's a cop, she's also going to law school at night because she has to get her law degree in time to run against the DA.
So that she can prosecute her husband's murder.
That's basically it, right? Yeah, so she could actually prosecute the people responsible for her husband's murder. And we also came up with a spinoff that took place like in the 50s of two political satirical comedians who accidentally stumbled across a vast conspiracy involving the DA and Dr. Cop's family.
Yep.
Vast crime family because they've been, you know, running this big organized political corruption network for like a century in their city.
Oh my God. Here's the pitch to Netflix.
So yeah,
here's the pitch to Netflix. So Dr. Cop, attorney at law.
We'd have a soft launch of that in an episode of Dr. Cop where she comes across old footage because their show has been like basically buried.
Yeah, they were silenced.
But I think they're basically they're like the Smothers Brothers meets Mort Saul.
So this is how we can do the AI thing. So you film Dr. Cop, attorney at law, like you film all of the episodes, whatever, but you have people wearing like, I don't know, sort of like special face gear. And then there's like, I don't know, like an array of like 50 actors that you can then cast into all of the roles as you go to watch Dr. Cop, attorney at law. That would be fun.
So, but I thought we cast this.
Did.
So Rashida Jones was Dr. Cop, right? Yes. And Sam Rockwell was the DA.
Yeah, we had a whole cast. But I'm just saying, if you could put your sort of like dream cast onto a movie or onto a procedural, that would be the way to do it. I like that.
I still think this is a multi-million-dollar idea for CBS.
Dr. Cop, attorney at law.
There's an entire cinematic universe here. You've got superhero fatigue.
Yes.
People have superhero fatigue. You know what they don't have? Dr. Cop fatigue. It hasn't set in yet.
Folks, we have every kind of show here. We have cop show. We have doctor show. We have lawyer show. We got, true crime, police procedural. Miss Maisel type shit going on.
And it's great because you could do like little mini story arcs where it's like mostly doctor, mostly lawyer, mostly cop. So like it stays fresh even within the season. It'd be great.
Do you think she has to have like 3 different friend groups, like her cop friends, her doctor friends, and her lawyer friends? Because these are groups that famously usually don't get along.
So she doesn't have lawyer friends yet because she's studying.
Oh, but
well, she's studying for the law degree.
But that makes it fun Because all of her lawyer
yet.
friends are like way younger than her, right? Because they're like law students.
No, not necessarily, because like if she's going to night school, most of the night programs are designed for like people that are picking up the law as a second career. So it actually makes a fun opportunity for all of her law school friends to be people that are other working professionals in other areas of life. So she can have friends that are like, this guy is a...
they can help her solve shit. There's like somebody works in retail, right? And they know about types of bags, right? So we got an Abby cameo.
This is like
Dr. Cobb.
They're like her Baker Street irregulars. It's the people that she goes to night school with that have all these weird skill sets that she can rely on.
Like her, they're all like weirdly multidisciplinary in ways that don't make sense. Like one works at a museum and also was a fashion designer, and another one's a veterinarian who also performed in a circus. And it'd be great.
You got to have one person who's like a union man, who's like a hard-nosed working class individual that just happens to be a brilliant legal theorist, despite the fact that like he's been working on the line for like the last 25 years.
Yes.
Oh, so speaking of union guy stuff, and sorry to get off topic here.
Oh, there's the first joke of the episode.
Did you see the video of the Teamsters guy yelling at the senator and then like challenging each other to a fight on the floor of the Senate?
Oh my God.
So I'll tell you what I thought about watching that. I thought like, that's a fucking union leader, And I thought about that compared to the Pro Soccer Referees Association statement, where it's like, we are referees. We are small beans. We cannot feel unsafe in our persons. It's unfair for a tall individual to speak to us.
There used to be rules for this sort of thing. It used to be that like somebody who messed with the union people, all of a sudden there'd be a knock at Mr. Miazga's door, and there'd be two very large gentlemen that would walk up and say, "We really don't appreciate the way you were treating our associates. We're here to inform you that this behavior will not repeat itself, correct?" And then there would be it wouldn't be a broken leg or anything like that because he needs that to make a living, but there would have been like a broken wrist, something that wasn't necessary for the playing of soccer would have been hurt severely in that situation. That's how they would have handled things back in the good old days.
But the like Pro Soccer Referees Union, like what, like somebody talked to you
right
in public
and they said,
come on,
they sent a mean tweet out into the universe.
Oh my God. Just
very
absolute sad. I can't even like describe it without saying a problematic word.
So this all makes it even funnier that Matt Miazga won Defensive Player of the Year.
Absolutely.
Right
the only thing to make this whole situation even funnier would be if Victor Rivas won Referee of the Year. Because he is a finalist.
They should make both of them pick their trophy up at the same time. But
they should have
to take a picture together. That should be like the punishment. Matt Miazga's punishment for whatever he did, and Rivas's punishment for being just soft as shit.
Yeah, for being a bad referee on the night. It could be like a boxing weigh-in where they both have to like show up with like their fists up at each other. It'd be good. Oh my God.
The fight no one knew they needed, but that everyone wanted.
So yeah, Matt Miazga wins Defensive Player of the Year. Cue the entire internet freaking out that FC Cincinnati's defensive captain wins an award. That was just lovely.
So my favorite part of that freak out was the only argument that people had against him was like, they'd be like, Dave Romney played every minute of the season.
Yeah, that's the worst argument.
Dude, that's a participation trophy.
Right.
It's also not the worst argument. The worst argument, yeah, but he's an asshole. It's like, right. I don't care, man.
That's in the plus column. Right. Like, you don't want your defender to be nice.
No, what I love about this Defensive Player of the Year is that part of the vote is the players themselves voting on this. And I said this to Pat Brennan. I said, they should invert that. The highest vote getter for Defensive Player of the Year should be worth negative points because you don't want the guy everybody else likes. The Defender of the Year should be the asshole that gets no votes because nobody can stand the guy because he's really, really good at what he does.
Right.
Who was the player from Portland who described, was it like Zach McMath?
No, it was like a minor player, man. Yeah, like Canadian national team, like 3 caps or something like that.
By the way, he's a dual national that the United States didn't even take a sniff at either, so he can fuck directly off.
So I gotta say this. I'll say this about him. Zach McGraw.
That's a country artist.
So there's a player from Portland. I'm looking up his name. I know a lot of like biographical details about him. Zach McGraw.
Okay.
He's American. He's got a Canadian mother, I believe. He recently, before the Gold Cup this year, accepted a call up to Canada because he was never going to sniff the U.S. national team, even though he went to like West Point.
Oh, yeah, damn.
He went to West Point.
Oh, that should be disqualifying.
And he accepted a call up to Canada.
Wow. That...
I feel like that's breaking some sort of
He's like the last
when
person,
you went to West Point.
He's like the last person who went to West Point to like directly take on the United States since like Robert E. Lee.
I was going to say Michael Flynn, but go ahead.
Oh yeah, that's true. He called, but he put a tweet when it was, I forget what it was, but it was just some like article that MLS published about Miazga. It wasn't even like the Defensive Player of the Year stuff.
That's what it was.
He like, because it was before Miazga was announced as Defensive Player of the Year. He quote tweeted it and he said like arrogant and overrated or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool, man.
Neat.
I'm glad you did that. I'm glad he did it, to be honest. Like, more players should do stuff like that.
Yes.
It doesn't make it like it's for one, it's super funny. 2, I love the attitude. 100%. Do not fault the attitude. And 3, it gives us something to talk. It gives us like, it makes the whole deal interesting.
Now I want Portland and Cincinnati to play. Yeah.
Right. It's the whole thing.
Miazga do like the height thing to him. I don't know. He's like the same height as Miazga.
They have the thing with regard to the NBA Twitter. It just says #this league is what everybody talks about. #this league. You need more of this. You need more players that are characters. You need more players that say silly shit. You need more players that are provocative, that are interesting. The MLS needs TO. Is what they need.
Yeah.
They need a guy doing sit-ups in his front yard. They need James Harden. They need someone who is just a bum and a locker room cancer that goes from team to team. And wherever he goes, he produces numbers but makes his team worse and then is public about just hating everyone. They need more people like that. They need the Stephon Diggs stuff where his brother is now openly asking for him to be traded out of Buffalo.
We need a Washington Wizards. We need a team that's like losing by 30 and doing like off the backboards past slam dunks on fast breaks. Like, just there is a dearth of like personality in the league because there is like there's a homogeneity across like how teams are constructed, and also like just basically like all the people that, or a lot of people that are running teams just like all came from the same places. They're all buddies. They all have the same ideas for things. People cycle through team to team. They're all friends.
I mean, the NBA's been accused of that too, that all the with AAU basketball, that the players are too congenial and the players are too, there's no real hate. Like you go back and watch all the old documentaries about the Pistons and the Bulls hated one another. Yeah. The Celtics and the Lakers hated one another. But now all the players, they all know each other from these camps and from these, elite academies and whatnot. I think the problem with MLS is that there is still in terms of this specifically, there's a lot of problems with MLS, but with this specifically is the league just needs to get over happy to be here and happy to have your attention.
Yeah.
And it needs to get over this idea that there is this implicit sort of unspoken current in MLS that we must, the media that covers it, the American-born players, that if we do something to this delicate little flower we've constructed, soccer in this country will go away. And soccer's here to stay, man. Like, soccer ain't going anywhere. And it's okay. It's okay to criticize the league if you're reporting on soccer in America. If you are a player, it is okay to rock the boat. It is okay to criticize the league. It's okay to criticize your teammates. Not if you're playing for FC Cincinnati. Please don't do that if you're playing for us. No, it's okay to talk shit about other players. I want to see more players throw former coaches under the bus. I want more controversy. Like, this is what they don't understand, is that this sells. This drives the narrative about the sport Monday through Friday when a game happens on Saturday. Like, it needs more of this, flat out.
And I think people. So I think that folks listening may be tempted to find like a contradiction here between like our complaints in the past that like MLS media revels too much in not treating the league seriously as a league.
Right.
But it's like the hashtag MLS stuff is like, oh, there was like 15 headers in a row or something. They'll be like, oh, this was like some dumb spectacle thing that affects the play, or like some weird thing happened, or there was like terrible refereeing or something. Like
some rules mechanism is confusing.
Yeah. Like that is like not treating the league as like a serious league. Players hating each other enough that they're like tweeting, calling each other like overrated.
Yeah.
Stuff like people like going after each other on the field. Like all the stuff Chief was talking about, those are things that happen in real leagues.
Yeah.
Because those things happen because the players and the people around it are taking it seriously as like both a competition and as a business.
Right. It's why you would tune into like Mourinho versus Arsene Wenger. Like, it was like these two managers don't like each other. They've gotten in shoving matches before. They have radically different philosophies on how to build a team, both very successful. That's interesting. It drives the narrative, and all week leading up to it, you've got them taking shots at each other in the media. And then afterwards, the post-game conference, it's all about, talking smack about the other one's game plan and how they won, and the other one has to eat shit. And that's fun. That's exciting.
Or you like turn on a Premier League game in the morning and you're like, okay, is this the game that Diego Costa scores 2 goals that have like in a spectacular way that have never been scored in the history of soccer? Or is this the game that he brought his shiv to the game?
Right.
Or that he's kicked out for spitting on 3 people and biting an official. Like, you just don't know what you're going to get in that moment. Yeah, I want more of that. I want John Tolkien from the New York Red Bulls to start referring to himself in the third person. And I want more coach. I want a coach of a team in MLS that is losing a lot of games to take his team out to the field, dig a hole and bury a soccer ball, and do some symbolic college football coach nonsense.
Love that.
I need more of this. Just make this league more interesting, for the love of Christ.
Yeah. No.
So thank you, Matt Miazga. This is all a long way to say thank you, Matt Miazga, for doing this. And also, I want a special thank you to your good friend, our good friend, official player of the year for the postcast, Aaron Boupendza, for yet again providing us with more interesting commentary, more interesting fan takes by being the least punctual player in the history of the FC.
Yeah,
so it's almost a running joke at this point, right?
It's so good.
I assume everybody listening to this is enough of a sicko to already know this. But again,
like, all 12 of you,
again, like, we've been accused of just jumping into stuff and referencing stuff that people don't necessarily understand.
Which we don't apologize for, but we're
no, we don't apologize for sure, and it's gonna keep happening.
It's on you, really, but
yeah, all the episodes
are
are available.
Go listen. Yeah.
Just go to Hocking Hills, spend a week in a cabin, listen to them all.
What a miserable weekend!
Oh my god! Especially those first episodes were really rough.
So
they were not good.
I don't know. I remember coming out of them thinking, like, man, that was really good.
Yeah, I like that.
Anyway,
don't go back and listen. Don't go meet your heroes.
So Boupendza has been Boupendza and another guy, Ndong, have been kicked off of the Gabon national team roster for this current international window for the 2 World Cup qualifiers because they didn't show up to training in Bongoville because apparently they just stuck around Libreville, which is the capital of Gabon. And the team put out a statement that was like, we're not sure why they're not here. They both have domestic flights tickets in hand.
Oh man.
It was so I don't know. I don't know what happened. We don't know what happened. We probably will never know what happened, but for some reason Boupendza and his friend did not make it to training on time and will not be participating in Gabon's World Cup qualifiers this window. So I expect to see him at FC Cincinnati training any day now.
Yeah.
Because this will surely be the one he shows up on time to. I just hope it was like the scene at the first scene in Major League where Jake Taylor is passed out in a bed and he has a sombrero over his head and the alarm is going off and the phone is ringing. That's Boupendza and his buddy in some hotel after having an absolute bender the night before. And they both look over and realize they've overslept their flight. And it's like, well, guess we'll just go home.
Yeah, we missed it. No big deal. Yeah.
Are we worried about this? Like, on one hand, it's like the easy joke is, does my man not own a watch? Or does his phone not have an alarm feature on it? Or one of those, because you know how you can set an appointment and it tells you, tell me when to leave.
Right.
Like, I feel like he should have had training with my national team and set one alert for like the day before and another one for traffic is light. It will take you 15 minutes to get to the airport right now. It's funny, but twice in 2 months? Am I overreacting when I say that there's an alarming lack of maturity to be late coming back from international duty the last time, apparently have some sort of a mea culpa moment with your manager, and then less than a month and a half later, pull the exact same thing with your national team?
I mean, it's not good, right?
We also don't know a lot of facts. We also don't know there could have been, there's any number of reasons why this could have been the case that are perfectly explainable, perfectly logical, and that don't reflect poorly on Aaron's character in any way. But the obvious sort of Occam's razor of dude's got a problem showing up on time for shit.
Right.
So I don't think it's an accident that the guy that he was late with was somebody who plays in Saudi, because Saudi and Cincinnati, those are two places that, as we know from Joe Burrow, nothing to do there for a professional athlete.
Right.
So when he gets to the nightlife hotspot of Libreville, temptation calls.
Party on.
And I actually found an article here. How to date girls in Libreville.
Oh.
Was this a Broadway show I didn't see?
No, but there's a picture of a group of men and women enjoying at the Butterfly Disco Club in Libreville. The Boomerang Club seems like probably where he went. Because that looks like a pretty popular club in Libreville.
Guys, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Next episode of Away Days.
Libreville. Let's go.
So
this Airbnb's like there.
This article says girls in Libreville Looks of girls, 3 out of 5. Attitude of girls, 3 out of 5. Loyalty of girls, 3 out of 5. Education level of girls, 3 out of 5.
You're basically just describing Toledo, Ohio.
Yeah. But it says, owing to the influence of foreign cultures, the dating culture in the city has been modernized. It involves going to the movies, clubbing, exchange of gifts, calls, texts, and visits. The man makes the move, as it is called.
Okay.
So I don't know. Anyway,
Wow.
do we care? Do we care about this? I don't care about it until it affects his time. I don't care about it until we find out when he made it back to Cincinnati.
Yeah. Like, he's now, like, the one thing I'm worried about is his headspace, right? Like, is he distraught over this or whatever, and is now going to spend a week being sad and drinking because he's not at, the national team thing? I don't even know if he drinks. Like, the accusation and the easiest guess is partying, but who knows? Gabon's also like a weird place right now. They just had a pretty dramatic military coup. The national team has had all sorts of drama over the years, including some insane sexual abuse allegations, players being arrested randomly, guys quitting the team regularly, coaches never being punished for, malpractice and things like that. So it's kind of a chaotic environment anyway.
His buddy that he was kicked off the team with actually was kicked off the team last year. I'm not going to go into it, but there's a whole athletic article actually from last year, 2022, about turmoil within the Gabon national team. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang had very similar issues, where he was out clubbing and coming back home to the hotel at 5 a.m. and they kicked him out of national team camp. I don't know. Can't pretend to know what all is going on with the Gabon national team generally.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the Boupendza's issue, if he has an issue coming back, I don't think it's going to be because he's sad he got left out.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a established enough pattern that he's making, let's say, rational choices about what he values.
Do we have to start Boupendza watch though? Now, is Boupendza watch back on until he shows up at training?
Let's start that Sunday.
Yeah, I think this was brought up on Twitter. I don't know. And Grayson, you would probably be the most likely to know in all of this. Apparently, the players' CBA or the standard player agreement includes some language about players getting time off around Thanksgiving. Matches aren't allowed to be played around Thanksgiving, something like that. So there may be something to that, even that we might have to wait a little bit before.
Was it the standard player agreement or was it the CBA?
I'm guessing it's the CBA, and I'm guessing it has to do with scheduling matches probably Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I might be overstating it, but somebody had brought that up as a reason why the playoff schedule is even more spread out this time of year than normal, because MLS's windows to play matches is.
So who brought that up?
Your favorite, my favorite, probably attorney, MLS advisor, whose name I can't pronounce.
Andrew Wisnowski.
That's the one.
There you go. He looks quickly through the CBA.
Yes.
Oh, Thanksgiving break. Okay, so section 17.3, Thanksgiving break.
Okay. So glad I wasn't lying.
So it says players required to play in a postseason game over United States Thanksgiving weekend will be entitled to receive days off during the 2-week break in the postseason, as follows, as determined in the team's discretion. Option 1, 3 consecutive days off. Or option 2, weekend off from noon on Friday through Sunday. Teams may train up until noon on Friday, plus an additional day off. So I guess like Friday to Sunday, plus like you get like a random Tuesday or Wednesday off. So yeah, there is a Thanksgiving break.
Interesting.
But it doesn't say when the 3 consecutive days off are.
Yeah, is that leading up to or after? Yeah.
It really says during the 2-week break. So we're in that 2-week break.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, we're in it.
So
best believe in a 2-week break. You're in it.
So then the 3 days is then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, presumably.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Great. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, please, boys. Get a little film room in on Friday.
So, well, maybe they're done training today and they're getting some days off.
Yeah, right.
Until next week, right? And have training up until leading up to the game. Like you don't want to take those days off. Like you don't want 3 days off and then play the game.
I mean, it almost sounds like what is required, but yeah, no, I agree with you. So yeah,
it's not what's required. It just says during the 2 weeks.
So just randomly during the 2 weeks. Okay.
So I assume it's like right now.
Okay. So with that in mind, yeah, then maybe Boupendza watch starts Monday.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean,
the way he probably sees it is I was going to be gone through this date regardless.
Right.
But
and he's clearly happy where he is. Presumably he's partying.
Yeah, I think he's having a great time.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I if I was involved with running the team, I would be like, well, you can like go to Rosedale.
Yeah. What does that website have to say about Cincinnati's nightlife? Oh man. I mean, look, we just got to get through the postseason, right? Like we can make bigger, larger picture assessments once MLS Cup has been won by somebody.
His goal against Red Bull was good as hell.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to tell you.
The last game he came off of no training in a similar sort of weird.
Had a goal and a non-assist.
That's what it was.
That was an assist.
Yeah, and incorrectly.
He played a ball in that led directly to Brandon Vasquez scoring a goal. I mean, he brought us back against Philly by himself.
Yeah. Like we said,
no training, no rest, just flying into Philly at 1:30 p.m.
from Paris or Portugal or whatever.
And I will tell you, if he keeps scoring goals throughout the playoffs, I will care less and less how often he shows up at training.
What does he drink, man? Let's go get some cases. It's working.
I mean, he wouldn't be the first DP for FC Cincinnati to miss some time related to partying.
True. But yeah, we just need him to score goals, man. Like that's what he's here for. I mean, yeah. The biggest thing now is just that he gets back on time. We don't miss anything.
Yeah. So his role right now, and to be, I don't know, blunt about it, there's no like really hope that he like gets like that he would ever be like fully like integrated into the offense.
Yeah.
This year.
Yeah.
Like to his maximum potential, right? I mean, like he should be getting better and better at playing with the other guys, all that, whatever. But right now, like he's just there to like kind of work some magic and get some goals. It's gravy.
Yeah.
Right? Because we spent most of the year without a DP forward. We got one. He scored some important goals for us.
Yep.
I hope he continues to. And if he parties a little bit, if he misses some training, as long as he keeps scoring and we keep winning, I perfectly fine with that.
Yeah.
What I would want to see is focus during preseason going into next year.
Yes. Then he becomes a far more important player to this team. Again, presumably Vasquez is sold this winter. At least, Vasquez's fate is a little more determined then. And then, suddenly this is Boupendza and Acosta's team, and we need him to show up for next year. So
and I want to see like that because I think he's we know he's got it in him.
Oh yeah.
Like I want to see that like next year is when we should have the expectation that we see like Boupendza and Acosta and whoever else is on the team having like that magical interplay between them. Like the type of stuff that we saw between hopefully better, but the kinds of, but in the class of the kinds of things that we used to see between Acosta and Brenner, like at the end of last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Where they're just all on the same wavelength. So
that's the dream.
Yeah. So there we go. Is there any other FCC news, or should we move on over to MLS news? A little MLS roundup.
There's going to be a light show at the next game, apparently on your cell phone. So it's one more opportunity to play the lights of Cincinnati. If you're listening, the fans demand the lights.
I think they fired everybody who would be listening. So
it's probably true.
But light show.
Maybe whoever's running the social media for both FC Cincinnati and Houston Dynamo is listening.
And if you're listening, there's this great Italian restaurant in the village that you need to try.
Oh God! All right, let's head on over.
I went to like the Cannoli King. I think
it's a bold statement.
Is what it was called.
I was gonna say, it feels like a good title to have.
It was a place. It was they were open past midnight. Is why we went there.
That's useful.
But it was good. It was good.
There we go. All right, let's head on over to part 2 and talk some MLS news, eh? This episode is brought to you by Cincy Shirts. Look, you know Cincy Shirts. You love Cincy Shirts. They've been with FCC from the beginning, and we here at the Postcast, we're just huge fans of their work. They were very early sponsors of the Postcast here, and we have always enjoyed their work. If you head on over to cincyshirts.com, that's Cincy with a Y, shirts.com, and check out using the promo code ThePostCincy, all one word, all caps, you will get 10% off your order, and you let them know that we sent you. Like, they have MLS and MLSPA licensed FCC gear available online and at their 2 retail locations in Hyde Park and Fort Mitchell. If they don't have your size on the shelf, they can print you one on the spot. That is a fantastic feature and something that I have used as well. So again, special thank you to Cincy Shirts. Head on over to their website or check the link down below in the description for the promo code ThePostCincy for 10% off your next order. And a huge thank you to Cincy Shirts. All right, we are back. We've got a little MLS News Roundup. Chief, I have a menu here in our show notes.
Our chef's menu, our tasting menu right here.
This is a choose your own experience. Where would you like to go first?
Let's go to New England. Let's start off at the top.
Let's start at the top. New England Revolution Stadium news. This is an exciting one for just general fans of the league. Also, if you don't like artificial turf and artificial pitches in your league, this is great news. It certainly appears.
This is not great. This is not great news. This is
okay.
This is their yearly season ticket sales are down. Let's remind people that if they buy now, they'll have priority to this soccer-specific stadium that is never going to be built, ever.
So that is certainly a fair take, I will say, with the New England Revolution. There have been a number of times that they've had stadium news leak, and it's always just hilariously like right when season ticket renewal time is up. So they are a little late, at least in terms of that window. However, we are learning about this due to documents released by that local government. It appears it is Everett, Massachusetts, which is one of those like cities in and around Boston that collectively are Boston, but like if you're not really like staring at a map, you'd be like, I'm in Boston. You'd be like, you're in Cambridge, or
I'm in Cincinnati. You're in
Somerville.
Norwood.
Yeah, right. So it's Boston. Yeah, so apparently the local government there in Everett has agreed in principle to engage in the development of a riverfront stadium on the Mystic River. It looks like a pretty decent location, about a 15-minute walk from the T. Looks like parking might be tricky, so all of the Revs fans that are used to driving out to Foxborough might not have a great time, but Riverfront Stadium, kind of looking at downtown Charleston, I feel like you could do worse than that. I don't know. Are we sad to see the history of this league and Gillette Stadium being potentially cast aside here, or are we excited for this glorious new future?
I'm mainly excited for a large construction project for the Irish mob to have a nice dumping site for a period of time.
We've needed...
Oh, I know exactly where this is. I stayed right around there the last time I was in Boston. There's a Steve Wynn has a hotel that's right there, the Encore Casino. It's enormous. Yes. It looks exactly like the one in Vegas. And then across the river is this new development called the Assembly Row. We, Mrs. Chief and I went out there last year in December and stayed around there. It's very, very neat, very growing like a weed, I would say. It's one of those places where you go to a city and you have this really overpowering feeling that, oh, none of this existed 15 minutes ago. This has all been like brand new Truman Show style built, all like the second before I stepped onto the spot.
Yeah, actually, it's a part of that agreement. It explicitly states you are not allowed to park at that hotel if you're attending matches at this soccer stadium. So
there you go. If you're attending a game at this future place, I do recommend the Assembly Row Hotel.
There you go.
Wonderful Bonvoy property.
It looks like there's also a TJ Maxx over there, according to the map I'm looking at. So knock yourself out.
I do hear that they have moved from North Face to Canada Goose up in Boston. So, so if you go,
plan appropriately.
If you go, better dress appropriately, or they will ha at you.
definitely want to look the part, at least while you're there. So yeah, good on New England for potentially doing this.
Around the horn, over under 2028. The stadium existing.
So the site is a former power plant. So if you're looking for a environmental survey to delay things, it feels ripe for a good old fashioned cleanup. I went to a music festival in Chicago once that was on the site of a former industrial, like I think waste dump or something like that. And I sneezed pure black for a week after coming back from this place. Like my snot was black. What are those called? They're like super max sites?
Super fun sites.
Super fun sites. Yeah. Chicago is like
not super fun, super fund.
Right.
The D at the end is very important in terms of.
They're very much not super fun. No, but Chicago is like a weirdly disproportionate number of them.
I mean, they're super fun if you were one of like the eco-terrorists from the Captain Planet cartoon. I'm sure you found the idea of the place very fun. Not a lot of people
like a class action lawyer.
Not a lot of people appreciate the old Captain Planet villains, the glee they took from polluting. Like it wasn't that they were getting rich on some sort of a factory or some sort of a capitalist scheme. That was just a means so that they could pollute harder.
We should watch 3 Captain Planet episodes.
I like that.
And do an episode on that in the off season.
I like this. You know, Chief, you make that point, but then rolling coal is a thing. So I don't know that they were that far off.
I remember an episode of maybe we should just watch this episode actually, and talk about it on an off-season podcast, because there is an episode that I always think of that is insane. It is an insane episode.
Like insane, even given the fact that there is a super powerful being that is summoned by 5 kids with rings.
Yes, it's a fully unhinged episode. And I haven't watched it since I was a kid. Even like at the time, I was like
it
what
broke
the
through
fuck
your
did I
kid
just
brain.
watch?
It broke through your kid prefrontal cortex. Be like, this is kind of fucked up.
It's like they shouldn't have done this.
Adding it to the list.
Who would have thought the kid with the heart ring would just give people hypertension? That seems kind of wild.
Oh, God. Well, speaking of hypertension, we're going to go back to our tasting menu here. And I am going to take us to Chattanooga FC joins MLS Next Pro. I think this is a notable moment for a couple of reasons. One, this is the first sort of identifiable local lower division brand that has jumped to MLS Next Pro.
Didn't Jacksonville Armada just jump to MLS Next Pro?
Jacksonville did as well. Jacksonville was a part of the NASL.
Sued MLS.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the original hardliners was the originators of the idea of going with and not a tier 3, not a tier 2, not a tier 1 league, a tier 0 league. They wanted to be outside of FIFA's rules and regulations. They have sort of existed as a B team or a U23 team out in the amateur wilderness for a long time, but they're joining. But they, for all intents and purposes, haven't been a club for 5+ years. But Chattanooga FC joining is, I'm also not including the weird Jamie Vardy Rochester Rhino reboot thing that was barely a team for a season. But I bring up the Chattanooga thing, one, because it's interesting that they are courting actual independent brands, but 2, it lets me go back to November of 2015 when Don Garber said this, and man, this is just a lovely quote. He said, quote, "Nobody looks at the NFL and says it's not working because there's no promotion and relegation," he said. "If you're investing billions and billions of dollars, which we are now at about 3.5 billion invested in MLS in 20 years to build something in Kansas City, and they have a shit season, to think they might be playing in Chattanooga in a stadium of 4,000 people on a crappy field with no fans makes no sense." Chief, best quote in American soccer history?
It's close to it. It's pretty damn good. I love Don Garber. This was also like a fully unhinged Don Garber.
Yes.
Usually he is smart enough, along with like the people that run the USL, to occasionally sort of dangle the bone that Pro Rel may someday come to these leagues. We're just not ready for it, or we're just not at a place to embrace it. Here, it was like mask off. It's like, hell no. None of these people that paid $100 million expansion fees are ever going to put that in jeopardy so that we can call up Chattanooga FC or the Richmond Kickers or some horse shit like that. I love a good commissioner as the villain moment. I think if you are a commissioner and you are getting cheered, you're doing a bad job. Gary Bettman has never been cheered in a single arena in the NHL. Famously, Roger Goodell booed whenever he's on stage, to the point that they have to like send him out at the draft with like troops and kids dying of some incurable disease just so that the crowd can't feel comfortable just booing him off the stage. Who was the dipshit that ran baseball for a bunch of years? Bud Selig. Everybody hated Bud Selig.
Yeah.
Bud Selig, yeah.
Commissioners are just commissioners are despicable figures. And Don Garber needs to, along with what we were talking about earlier about this league needing more drama around it, Don Garber just needs to be a bigger villain. He needs to embrace villain status.
He did say those comments about the US Open Cup that like they don't want people to watch that product because the fields aren't good enough and the level of play isn't high enough, and it's like
more of that.
What's that?
I need more of that.
Yeah, I mean, fair, but like I don't know. It was also insane because like I still think the best game of the MLS season was the not for me,
right?
But like for neutral viewers, the best game of the MLS season was still the Open Cup semifinal between FC Cincinnati, Inter Miami. I was looking at the MLS
game at all.
I was looking at the MLS Next Pro future expansion plans, and Cleveland Pro Soccer is planning to join in 2025 as one of the independent teams.
And that's right.
And the owners said they intend to bid for 2026 National Women's Soccer League expansion.
Wow.
So here's my question. Is this a sock puppet to move the Columbus Crew to Cleveland and have a united Cleveland soccer organization? And would that be the funniest and best thing to ever happen in the history of American soccer?
Man, you know what would be really funny? And you would put the diehards in a really funny spot. And I don't want this to come across wrong, but you move the Columbus Crew to Cleveland, but at the same time, you drop an NWSL franchise in Columbus branded as the Crew.
You know what would be the funniest thing, actually? Build a stadium for the NWSL team in Cleveland and have them be like the Northern Ohio Crew.
Okay.
And they play half their home games in Columbus and half their home games in Cleveland.
There is some teeny tiny amount of precedent to that, which is the Columbus Crew used to play most of their early round, if not all of their Open Cup games in Akron, Ohio, as an attempt to like spread the love around up there.
Now I'm sitting here thinking about, so the biggest hang up that the Crew faced in their relocation to Austin was MLS's desire to, number one, avoid discovery during a lawsuit about the move that would have been filed for a violation of whatever the ORC provision that Modell's law is that prohibits a team from moving if they've accepted public funding for a stadium in Ohio. I'm genuinely curious how that would play out if the team wasn't leaving Ohio.
That's the thing. I think it only applies to Ohio. I mean, you'd have to look at
it's never been litigated, so there's no precedent to read about like how this law would be interpreted.
Right.
But like the person who would be in charge of suing would almost certainly be the attorney general.
Right.
And so
they'd have to be insulting the presumably the fans in Cleveland that want this team, right?
So actually the Modell law allows specifically for relocation within the state.
I don't think it'd have to be a Columbus law to prevent them.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have identified a loophole.
Not a loophole. It sounds like it's just
the hole. That's the one hole.
I didn't say how big the loop was.
Man. I like the idea of giving an NWSL team. So he's like, well, you can't get mad. We're still keeping a soccer team there. Well, are you saying the women's team is an equivalent? Like, that's not good of you.
Grayson, order something off the tasting menu.
Chicago Fire.
I had a feeling you'd go there.
Chicago Fire re-signing George Heights and whoever their sporting director is.
In the Heights.
Probably another Swiss guy. Yeah.
It just proves that there are no consequences at all for failure. Although I say that like half this league is looking for a new coach right now, so it's just weird to me that what does Chicago think they're doing right? Like, what's the elevator pitch for keeping these people?
So the quickest, fastest thing is Gaga Salina and John or whatever were sold for a combined like $50 million. And that's enough to cover your operating expenses for a couple of years in Major League Soccer with revenue sharing and all that. That probably put a decent amount of coin back into the owner's pocket. Job well done, boys. You can identify the good ones and we can sell them off, and you have contacts in Europe because you made me buy that Swiss club that one time. And so we have the ability to ship these guys out and make a pretty penny. That's it. And if you're like looking at this from a super high level, sure, that's probably good. But if you are trying to sell tickets to this thing or trying to convince people in Chicago that they should be fans of this team, that's the same pitch you give to coming out to a AA ball club and saying, look at these superstars that came through here 10
stars
years
of
before.
The future.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, it's a single entity league. At a certain point, the interests of the league and having a Chicago team that's well run, doesn't that, like, at the board meeting or the owners meeting, do they all sit around in the room and look at the guy that owns Chicago? Is it
it's the guy from Morningstar, Joe Mansueto.
Satan?
Yes, Joe Mansueto.
Joe Beelzebub.
Don't mind the horns.
Joe Mephistopheles.
It's an embarrassment for the league that one of the biggest markets just keeps stepping on rakes over and over again. I don't know. It feels like in a single entity league, this is the rare circumstance where you can do something about that. They can't get rid of Jerry Reinsdorf with the Bulls and make the Bulls better in the NBA. The NFL for years couldn't do anything about Mike Brown. They can't do anything about the guy that owns the Pirates in the Major League Baseball. In MLS, they can absolutely do something about this. They can say, you know what? For the good of the league, this media market needs to be better in a hurry. You're firing these people, and we're going to tell you who to hire. We're going to find better soccer people for you.
Yeah. Or Chivas USA them. Like, you kill it. You let them go a couple of years in the wilderness with nothing, and you get your ducks in a row. You go recruit a couple of billionaires. I know the owner of the Cubs was trying to drop a USL franchise in there. The Chicago Bears are looking, I believe they are 100% building a new stadium elsewhere in Chicago. So line up a billionaire investor to come up with a plan for Soldier Field that works for soccer, and give it a couple of years and then relaunch it, sign Robert Lewandowski at the end of his career and start over.
We're going to bring back Schweinsteiger and finally win that World Cup.
Right.
So this is like unambiguously, literally, inarguably the worst stretch of Chicago Fire's entire existence.
Damn.
And that stretch coincides entirely with like the tenure of the management that just got extended. That's wild.
They've spent, it was last year, 2 years ago,
insane amounts of money.
Yeah.
The only
Shaqiri was like Shaqiri is like the most expensive player in the league before Messi.
Oh, yeah. I'm counting it. You get 80% of the way through a name.
I did just find an illegal download of Police States, so you're in luck. I'll share that.
Share that with me. I'll watch it before I watched it before the next episode.
Oh, so good.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
next episode we may have to have your guys' book reports on this.
The only hold on, I'm admiring this because this was me, and I woke my wife up, and she was very upset when the last time this happened.
God damn.
Grayson, how you feeling right now?
I'm so happy.
Not great.
Oh, okay.
Not good. Not good. Not great. Not okay. I need to go to BetterHelp, our new sponsor.
Do you need to remove a word from your vocabulary? Try hypnosis with BetterHelp.
So
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if they would have extended Gerard Nijkamp again? Like, that's what this is.
People give a shit for firing him.
Insane.
They're like, oh, this is the third. By the way, it's not.
Right.
He's not the third chief soccer officer. Albright's not the third chief soccer officer. We don't count Birding.
No.
Like, he was just the guy when there was nobody.
Right.
He wasn't doing anything.
He's a part owner. Like, you can't say, yeah.
So, but everybody talks about like it being mismanagement, that like Nijkamp was fired after 2 years and they hired Albright.
No, that's good.
No, that's what you do when they suck.
Yes.
Yeah, it's ambition. That's the hard part about this is that what do you want, Chicago? You want ambition. They're not ambitious. It's just we're just going to keep the same cast of characters and just hope magically that they produce different results. I mean, give FC Cincinnati credit. It's an ambitious ownership group that didn't accept mediocrity at any stage in this process.
So I will defend the turnover at the coach and sporting director levels in FC Cincinnati. Okay.
Yeah.
So we brought up Alan Koch. Bad idea. Bad move.
Yeah.
Like, I will say that. Bad move. They should not have come to MLS with Alan Koch as the head coach. Okay.
Yep.
But he didn't perform and they fired him.
Good.
They took some time and they hired Ron Jans, who looked to be doing a pretty good job.
Yeah. Solid resume.
But like, the reason he was fired, nothing to do with Jeff Birding.
Yeah.
And in fact, he should have been fired. He needed to be fired. And a lot of we've since learned a lot of teams in this league would not have had the courage to fire that coach.
And reading between the lines on that press conference, Nijkamp didn't want to fire him either.
Nijkamp didn't want to. Right? Our boy Jeffy B, for all his faults, did the right thing.
Yeah.
And then the next coach that was hired was Jaap Stam,
who
was hired by Nijkamp over Dom Kinnear and potentially over a coach who will not be named, who may have been interested in the job at the time, but currently was re-upped at their current job earlier this year. But but he let Nijkamp make that Jaap Stam hire, and gave him like 2 years. Well, not 2 years, but gave him the better part of 2 seasons.
And during that time, Jaap Stam put together, I think, the worst performance of a Major League Soccer manager of all time. I think statistically, there's like 2 managers worse. But I think given the resources available to Stam and what that roster did immediately after his departure, I think he was the single worst manager in MLS history.
So what are they supposed to do come August and October of 2021? To avoid the criticism of having too much turnover. They're supposed to give these guys extensions?
Give them extensions.
Or are they supposed to fire them and hire Pat Noonan and Chris Albright?
And the thing is, too, is that, that blueprint is out there and it's worked. Why isn't Chicago being raked over the coals right now that there was another team that was floundering, even worse than Chicago, in a smaller media market than Chicago, with fewer resources than Chicago, They made a bold decision to go and get an MLS veteran GM who had been in the league forever, hadn't had a chance to run his own program, but was an MLS guy. He hired an MLS assistant coach, guys that know the league, and there was an immediate turnaround. They're in a very similar situation to us with European-based management, European-based coaching, and the blueprint on what to do when your European-based leadership team sucks. FC Cincinnati is the guiding light for what to do in this situation. You launch these people and go get people that understand how to win in this league. You know who people like that are? They're like Dom Kinnear. They're like Kenny Arena. Go do the exact same thing that we did to Philly.
But not them specifically.
Not them specifically. Please don't.
People like them.
People like them.
Thank you.
But really give Kenny Arena a job. He deserves a promotion.
No, come on.
I like Kenny. I want him to get his own club.
Do you think if he gets another job, he'll come on again before he starts that new job?
Absolutely not.
I owe him a couple bottles of bourbon now that he's won Supporter Shield.
There's another honestly another example, and I know this has become like a secondary Houston podcast, but like Houston's like a big market example, of a team that turned it around really quickly just by hiring Pat Onstad and hiring Ben Olsen to coach.
Yep. Yep.
So,
but Houston's another media market that needs more fan buy-in and like
they do.
Buy-in.
They need more fan buy-in, but they got it right this year.
Yes.
They won Open Cup. They're still in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They got
results
a pretty
key.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like they've got the results, and hopefully with the results, Hector Herrera won he didn't win Comeback Player of the Year, but he won like the Gonzalo Higuain Comeback Player of the Year, which was didn't give a shit and then decided to give a shit and played better.
I came back from my own apathy.
I came back from not being very good or wanting to be very good.
Right.
But he's had a great year. Like for me, he's the number 2 in the MVP race.
Joe Mansueto, by the way, according to Forbes, they have their real-time net worth as of right now is worth $5.9 billion. I believe that is more than the total sum of our ownership group. So
you know what the difference is, and I don't want to. This is potentially unfair.
Oh,
okay.
Because Carl's got like a direct in with the big man.
I think it's not a coincidence that a prominent athletic writer got massive access to Joe Mansueto at the beginning of last season and also has not published a critical word of any of the decision making for the last 2 years. And
this is all to say, Carl, we can be bought. Carl, we have a price. Yeah.
This
because nobody can write about FC Cincinnati's success without being like, well, they had a couple coaches that sucked.
Right.
Like
I really like this. Joe Mansueto, again, real-time net worth. It is down 0.12%. That's $13 million. That's one Shaqiri. He's down today.
So so Chicago has gotten worse every year under Heights. They were like 11, 11, 12, 13.
Right.
Is there a difference between finishing 12th or 13th in the East and finishing last in the East? Should you get any credit for finishing not last? I think no.
Yeah, you should get some credit just because like there's your team's give a shit meter ran hot enough to keep you out of last place. Like there's a personal pride to not finishing last, I think.
Sure, but again,
we're talking like degrees of nonsense here. Like it's not a big difference.
But if you finish close to last 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, they suck. Like that's
versus
there's no
finishing
there.
last 3 years in a row and then finishing what were we last year? 4th?
Right.
In the East?
5th? 4th?
5th.
I don't remember.
5th.
Yeah, because we didn't have a home game.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were 5th in the East.
So Yeah, I mean, here's the other thing too, is like if you're trying to say that like you're going to tank for a year to get better next year, the lower you finish on the table, the more GAM you get and the higher the draft pick you get is. And not that draft picks are huge, but like you'd rather have Roman Celentano than not Roman Celentano. So like, yeah, I don't know.
Don't say that because I still hold out hope we can get Spencer Ritchie on the podcast.
I'm just saying, in terms of like, there's value to be had in the draft at the very highest levels. So yeah, if you could have the top 1 or 2 picks and an extra 200,000 in GAM, you'd rather have that than say you finish 10th, I think.
It all is a big deal, or maybe it's not a big deal, because I'm going to order the next thing off the tasting menu, Kevin.
Oh,
and that's
please.
that we learned this week in a tweet. MLS Commissioner Don Garber, Apple VP Eddie Q, speaking now at a conference. Eddie Q, who, if you're just an Apple head like me, you've been seeing him in press conferences with, Tim Apple and before that Steve Jobs forever. Eddie Q, quote, "We had more than 1 million viewers for the biggest games on MLS Season Pass. Nobody expected that. World Soccer Talk in shambles right now. More than 1 million viewers. How do we feel about that? I think that's the haters and the losers will claim it's fake.
I mean, Apple is a publicly traded company, and I think there are legal ramifications to them making shit up like this. I could be wrong. Definitely not my area of expertise, but I think they'd have to be careful.
No, they're subscriber numbers. They're not tax revenue figures. We have to have some degree of transparency here.
And at some point, somebody's got to put a number down on a piece of paper and send it on over to somebody. Assuming it is true, fucking incredible. And this entire experiment is a success in year one.
Also, I don't want to hear anything about, they were only certain games featuring, a certain player. It's like,
right.
Nobody says that about the NBA when like LeBron has the highest rated game of the year and that the Lakers are always the highest rated team. Nobody said that about the NFL when Tom Brady and Peyton Manning were playing one another. Stars drive engagement. Stars drive numbers. That's you're trying to dunk on MLS,
right?
When this is the most regular ass sports league thing they've done in a while,
right? And like, as opposed to what? Like, go look at the Premier League viewership numbers that NBC puts out and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, wouldn't you know it? The bigger teams draw the bigger fans. The team with the most superstars draws the most viewers. Like, this is so stupid.
Yeah. Nobody's turning into a Minnesota Timberwolves game on TNT, but you put Victor Wembanyama out there, or you put Steph Curry. Yeah, you're going to get people tuning into it.
Yeah. Again, if these numbers are true, like MLS was getting a couple 100,000 of people a match on Fox Sports 1 last year and on ESPN. And it would be an amazing situation where they would crack 500,000. There was 1 or 2 games where they would approach 1 million, and it required them, double heading the, El Tráfico and an NBA game or something like they really specific circumstances to pull that off. But if MLS is getting a couple of matches hitting 1 million plus, that's amazing. Like the fact that they're doing it behind this quote unquote paywall, as opposed to cable not being a paywall. This kind of proves the experiment, and presumably it only goes up from here. They can continue to recruit bigger and bigger superstars. Well, not bigger, but more and more superstars. And this is your game plan going forward. I don't know.
I would hope so, at least. I don't know. The rubber meets the road moment for this is going to be when and if they stop giving away subscriptions to season ticket holders and people actually have to start paying to watch games. It seems like they comped a lot of subscriptions this year, and I'm kind of curious if they will keep doing that or if their business model includes doing that as part of the cost of doing business.
Well, it's funny too because
like ads, right?
Yeah,
there's definitely some ads.
Ad revenue will certainly be tied to like number of subscribers in some way.
Mhm.
So like, yeah, you're not getting my like $80 a year because I have season tickets, but you get to include me in your total subscriber numbers when you're selling your ads.
Right.
I don't know what the numbers
also
look
Apple-
like, but that has to be like a calculation.
And the other calculation for Apple too, and I think we talked about this when the deal got signed, is that like there is a known percentage in terms of how many people they will get to buy an iPhone or a MacBook as part of they have to interact with this Apple product, and it leads them to go into an Apple store and buy another Apple product because, oh, it makes it easier to watch your MLS matches. And with the amount of money they make on that, that's a shitload of subscription value if they can get you to buy one iPhone if you're an Android user.
Yeah.
And in the near term, this is not going to be true I don't think this would be true for the duration of the 10-year deal or beyond that. But in the near term, there's some loss leader value in Apple just proving to other sports suitors
Oh, yeah.
that they can put on like a sports product at a high quality level.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We know that Apple was negotiating for, and as far as we can tell, came second with the NFL Sunday Ticket, but Apple was demanding a similar situation to MLS where they wanted zero blackouts, everything, all the time. They also did the same thing with the Premier League. They were trying to negotiate the global rights, but the Premier League would not sell their domestic rights separate from the international rights. Apple didn't want to play that game. I also think legally the Premier League is in some like weird thing where they have to do something with English rights.
There are certain blackout restrictions that are imposed by law on certain times of day where if the match is played, they're just not allowed to televise it.
Right. And then the one I'd keep an eye on, though, is NBA commissioner basically listed his laundry list of what he wants to see out of the next NBA deal. And it was global rights, all on one platform, no blackouts. It's like, hey, man, that's the Apple deal. So if the NBA and MLS end up on the same platform, I think it'd be very interesting. They complement each other well, given the times of year that they run their competitions in, and you could see package deals being offered and things like that. I think they would complement each other well.
Yeah. Not to get geopolitical, but there's a really interesting part of this that with Apple's relationship with China currently, and China being a big target for growth for a lot of these sports leagues right now currently. So that's going to be interesting to monitor. Mm-hmm. But that would be an entirely separate podcast that nobody listening to this would want to listen to.
So I don't know how much longer we have, or if we want to do like a segment 3. But I do have something I want to talk about.
It sounds like a segment 3 to me.
All right.
Just looking at our tasting menu here, just real quick. The DeBella shirt sponsor for Portland. That is not the sandwich shop.
It's a hell of a sandwich shop, though. Like, it really is an underrated spot to grab a sandwich.
It is like a home improvement, like a contractor type situation, like general contractor thing. The only thing I bring it up for is it is probably the smallest company by quite a margin to sign a sponsorship deal. The new shirt sponsor for Portland Timbers. Just kind of a head scratching move over there with that. They just signed, what's his name?
Neville.
Yeah. Gary Neville?
Phil Neville.
Phil Neville. I knew I was going to mess it up.
Yeah, you messed it up.
Phil Neville as the new manager. Just like head scratching decisions coming out of Portland. Was one of the standard bearers in this league, and now I am very thankful our club doesn't look like their club. So there you go.
You always have to assume in these situations that like a bag of cash changed hands, or that somebody like the construction company made a body disappear for someone that was in ownership for Portland.
I mean, there are people Portland front office would like disappeared. So there you go. All right, let's head on over to part 3 and see what Grayson has in store for us. Here we are. We are in part 3. We're in no man's land. This is great because Chief and I have genuinely no idea what topic is going to come up. So we are right there with you, dear listener, in that. Here we go, Grayson. What do you got for us?
So this is not a funny topic. This is just something that we have not talked about, and I think it's worth talking about.
Bring it on.
And it's that the U.S. women's national team has hired a manager.
They have.
Emma Hayes, the manager of Chelsea women.
Yep.
One of the most decorated managers in all of women's soccer.
Fair to say the best manager going? I know that's very subjective, but
I think she is generally considered the best manager going in women's soccer. It was a big surprise that she got the job. She was not
worked for
one
Chelsea.
of
Of course, she's the best.
She was not one of the 3 finalists that were like covered by the Athletic article like the week before she was hired.
Weird.
But it came out this week that she is making so there's like a bunch of interesting aspects to her hire.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that came out this week was that she essentially is being paid on par with Greg Berhalter.
Right.
Which makes her the highest paid women's coach in all of soccer. Which I think is exactly how it should be.
Congrats.
To the U.S. women's national team.
Yeah.
If we're not...
In fact, Greg Berhalter's being overpaid, I think, at this point.
Right. And like, I don't think Vlatko should have been the highest paid coach of women's soccer, but I do think that we should get a coach who is worthy of being the highest paid coach of women's soccer. But she's also not starting until after the current Women's Super League season is over, which could be all the way to the end, I think to like May 25th.
Yeah, it's usually
if
the
Chelsea
end of May.
make the Champions League final.
Whew.
So there's a few things I want to. There's a few things I think that are worth talking about. One is there has been some talk that having parity between. I'll tell you what I think about this first one before I ask you guys what you think. But
yeah,
there's been some talk that having parity in pay between the men's and women's coaches played a factor in the kind of coach the men's team could hire. And then also, what do we think about her not starting until like 2 months before the Olympics? So on the first point, I think the first point is bullshit. There is equal pay, like order or agreement, but it doesn't apply to coaches. So if the men's team wanted to hire a better coach than Greg and they were willing to pay more, they could have done that.
Right.
It's not the women's team's fault that Greg is the coach of the men's team. And I just want to be very, very clear because I've seen people say otherwise.
Right.
If you're mad that Greg is the coach, if you're mad that Greg is the coach of the men's team, do not blame equal pay.
Right.
No, you need to have an external tormentor. You need to identify the source of your torment. And Greg Berhalter returning for many of us was an ultimate "what are we doing here" moment. And human beings struggle to create narrative and to, man looked in the sky and saw stars that were in a certain order and decided that one looked like a cup and that one looks like a hunter. And in this case, I looked in the sky and this appears to be the reason why this asshole got rehired, despite having absolutely no accomplishments worthy of being given another World Cup cycle and being actively bad at man management for some of his top players. Of course, I'm going to have somebody to blame, and that's going to be the women's team because I'm an incel online commenting on Twitter, which is where all these takes are coming from. Also, what really shows that's bullshit is if there really was a requirement for equal pay between the two coaches, then pay more to the men's coach and offer her more money to coach the women. I don't think she would have turned down an extra $1 million if she was offered it.
That's the thing that kills me is like the revenue that these programs bring in is so great that the $1.6 million salary is not that big of a deal, I wouldn't think, in the overall grand scheme of what they're doing. And if that number rises to 2 million or 2.5 million or 3 million, like, you're fine. Like, the women's program historically has brought in more revenue than the men's because they play a ton more friendlies in larger stadiums and they tend to be more successful in tournaments that are increasing their prize pool. But I think this part is interesting too, which is like, oh, we're stuck with a poverty coach. Greg Berhalter was like the 11th or 12th highest paid manager.
I think 13th, but
13th. Okay.
Yeah.
The 13th highest paid manager at the World Cup. Like, that feels right for the U.S. Like, were we really going to go out and get the guys in the top 10? Unlikely they would ever accept the U.S. job. So
economics for national team jobs is very different from club team jobs because I think the highest paid national team coach is Hansi Flick at Germany.
Yeah.
And he's at like $6 and change million.
And I'd say not worth it.
Right, sure. But like Pep and Mourinho are like what 20, 30
right
plus $1 million a year. Like it's a different stratosphere. But like is it unfortunate that you got to be the best coach in the women's game to get paid the same as somebody who treaded water with Columbus Crew? Yeah, that's a shame. But
I'm also not bothered by your point that she's waiting till the end of the Super League season to coach. I'm sorry. She's the best available option out there. To a certain extent, she gets to dictate terms. And if you wanted her to start sooner, there are ways to do that financially, and that involves adding more money to the paycheck. I'm sure there was a number that would have caused her to walk away from Chelsea immediately.
Well, you would have had to pay Chelsea a fee. Right.
Whatever
so
that number is.
Yeah.
There's a number that makes that happen. If you don't want to pay that number, there's a cost of doing business with someone, and getting the best available option out there is your hire.
Here's the deal. We offer Chelsea Women's Greg Berhalter.
I was going to say the same thing. So I agree 100%. I think that, you find a coach that's worth the money, because I had two criteria that I was like in my head for what I was hoping for the women's team coach. Mm-hmm. And one was somebody from outside the current program, like somebody who's going to come in. They have no like particular allegiances to existing players. They're coming at it and they just are like, I'm just going to put the best team together with the best tactics and win. Right. And number two was I wanted them to spare no expense and get the best, like pay whatever it took to get the best coach they could.
Right.
And for me, they hit both of those with this hire. I did hear that they made a play for Samantha Wegman, the I think England national team coach. But she's like still under contract for a while. And they were not given Serena Wigman. They were not given permission to talk to her. So but I did appreciate that was reported that they, tried to get her. And I assume that there's going to be staff members who are tasked with like implementing her ideas
right
in the meantime. And the message I take from letting her start in late May is one, we found the person that as Chief said, we found the person we want to coach the team, right? This is the best person we can get for the job. and we're not going to settle for somebody other than this just because we can get them in sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2, it tells me that this is a long-term project, and we're not hiring this person just to like try to, do good at the Olympics this summer. I assume that they are thinking that this is the coach we're going to take through the next World Cup.
Yeah.
And I think that's the right way to think about it.
And I think that it's important that they brought her in from outside U.S. soccer, because if there's one criticism of the women's team that I think is valid over the last World Cup cycle, is that there was a reluctance and an unwillingness to make hard decisions with players whose personality and reputation at this point vastly exceeded their skill set, and bringing in someone from the outside who can take a critical look and take a hard look at who are the players to build around for the next cycle, and who will have no problem telling people no, who might have already been in camp before. Fresh eyes on the women's team at this point is a good thing. Fresh eyes on the women's program from someone who is world renowned for their coaching ability in the women's game is only going to be a positive. It's worth waiting for.
Yeah. My only question is, how close was Phil Neville to getting this job? Because that would have felt like a U.S. soccer move.
Yeah, so to Chief's point, I remember when Jill Ellis stepped down and Vlatko was hired. There were a lot of players who were outwardly very happy to have Vlatko take over, who they had not liked Ellis, and they said a lot of bad things about Ellis.
I hate people who win too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and looking back, maybe you don't want somebody who's picked by the players, because Ellis won 2 World Cups. Right. You could argue about how much of that had to do with the talent she had and how much of that had to do with her as a coach, but she won 2 World Cups, and Vlatko had the worst World Cup in U.S. women's national team history.
Right.
Greg Berhalter, beloved by the players.
I love the criticism of coaches for having good players. Like Bill Belichick gets that all the time. It's like, oh, well, Jill Ellis only won because she had the best players. It's like, no. You can fuck it up with a bad manager.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. Don't you want the good managers to get out of the way of the talent? I don't know. It's the dumbest criticism ever.
I'm excited to have somebody come in from the outside who is just going to put their own stamp on the program and doesn't have any baggage. Or, I know she's got a couple of Katerina Macario and Mia Fischel are current Chelsea players. So, I expect they'll be included. But you know what? I would expect they would be included anyway.
Right.
Because they're good as hell. So,
right. The other thing I really like about this hire, too, is that she's coming from club culture. Right. And I do think that with the women's coaching role specifically, part of what there has to be an understanding of is that the rest of the world is catching up to the women's game in America. And there needs to be a renewed focus from the top down on improving the club play and improving the club profile of teams here in the United States, and more synergy between the women's national team and the NWSL. I know people got on Don Garber about that, with how he was feuding with Jurgen Klinsmann back in the day, with Klinsmann being openly hostile towards players that wanted to play in MLS. The criticisms of the domestic league with Klinsmann and MLS, they don't exist with the NWSL in women's soccer. The NWSL is still one of the best places to play in terms of competition level for women. And the profile of that league needs to continue to grow if the women's game is going to be still in ascendancy here in the United States. They can't allow the NWSL to continue to slip. And it's been slipping for a while in terms of competition level. Whereas it used to be the gold standard, there's a lot of good places to play now. And the NWSL needs to level up. And having a person, a manager with a club experience, I think can only help that.
Yeah, I think the huge positive on that front is the NWSL just signed a new media rights deal with like 4 different streaming partners, but primarily CBS, where they're going to be putting the NWSL final on CBS proper. Paramount Plus is going to carry a number of games, CBS Sports Network. But the big takeaway there is that the money per team is going up like almost tenfold. So these teams should have more cash on hand. The salary cap should be increasing. I mean, it was just a couple of years ago, maybe even now, like the minimum salary is something like $15,000 for players or something like that. It's like some absurdly low number where you've got players Ubering on the side and stuff. It's USL League One payment structures there, but the superstars of the women's soccer world are playing in your league. It's just a weird league, whereas hopefully going forward, that is the case, and it should be in a much, much healthier spot. And
it should be showcased, because there was an interview I think came out today of a Spanish player who had played for Barcelona in Spain and has been playing in NWSL, and she said like the big difference of NWSL and playing for Barcelona is that like every game in NWSL is like a Champions League game. And that there aren't like the easy games in the league that you do. And it should be showcased like it is like the premier women's league in the world.
And you only get one shot at keeping that. Like, yeah. Once you get knocked off by
that's not a forever thing. No.
Once you get knocked off by any of the leagues over in Europe, the same shit will happen that's happened to soccer elsewhere. But right now, the league is viewed the same way as the Premier League is viewed on the men's side, which is players want to come from Europe to America to play in the NWSL, and U.S. soccer specifically should be fighting tooth and nail to keep that distinction, because once it goes away, it's going away forever.
Yeah. You've already got a number of fans in the U.S. that have their allegiances and loyalties to various European clubs. It would be very easy to flip that switch.
The last thing I'll say about Emma Hayes is I hope she gets the opportunity to like really get in front of American soccer media, because she sounds like quite an interesting, fun person from some of the interviews I've read. Like there's an interview out there where she talks about like going to a fortune teller in like 2007 and the fortune telling her that she's going to like do great things at Chelsea. And like, it's just like, there's like a lot of stuff like out there. And I just like really want her to get like front and center, because she seems just like a cool, interesting, person. By the way, this is totally off topic. I just saw this on Twitter. Pat Brennan said the FC does not practice tomorrow. So, our earlier conversation about the Thanksgiving break, it sounds like the Thanksgiving break is happening this weekend.
This is it. Get your turkey. Get your turkey on, gentlemen.
Or he's saying that they're not training because they're not training so that everyone can be at the team facility to give Lucho a surprise when he's announced as MVP. Like one of those ones where everybody parks someplace else. They ride them all into the facility. So Lucho is called to a meeting in the empty parking lot. He's confused why he's there. He's walking around on his little legs, not sure what's about to happen. And then as soon as he opens the door to the training complex, the entire facility emerges with a surprise, and his MVP award is being presented to him. Wholesome video content that our New York social media admin can hopefully fly into film.
I mean, there's a party bus company that has their offices like right next to Mercy Health Training. So I feel like having all the players park somewhere else and take the party bus over would be great fun. That's content in and of itself.
Yeah.
Boupendza's driving the bus. It'll be fun.
No, the bus wouldn't leave because Boupendza would be late arriving.
Not if it's a party bus.
He's already on that party bus, baby. Let me tell you. Well, there you go. Wow. For nothing to talk about, gentlemen, I think that's a postcast.
It's not a postcast. It's not a postcast. We finish it. Fuck Columbus.
thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast, which is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com for all of our written content, as well as links to our social media. You can follow us on Twitter, and as well, you can join us on our Discord server. You can find links to that server both in this episode description as well as on our website. That is where most of our conversations are going on. We have a lovely community there talking about FC Cincinnati, MLS, anything and everything else and everything in between. We also want to give a huge thanks to Jim Trace and the Makers for providing all of the music you've heard throughout this episode. They're an amazing local Cincinnati band. Again, more information about them is in the description of this episode. And if you enjoyed what you listened to, and you've made it to the end, so I'm going to assume you liked it, or you just can't reach your stop button, please like us, review us, subscribe to us wherever you are getting your podcasts. That is going to be really, really helpful. But more importantly, share this with a friend. A personal recommendation helps spread a podcast so much further. So please share this if you know somebody in your life who's an FC Cincinnati fan, an MLS fan, somebody that you think would enjoy this. Pass it on over. Thank you so much again for listening. It blows me away that people continue to listen to us. And thank you so much again.